Welcome to this video. Today we will start talking about photovoltaics. Photovoltaics means that solar energy is converted to electricity. And from the very early times, you probably remember the calculators. They have the solar cell up here in order to not need any battery changing. Solar cells have developed a lot. And I have another example here. So this is a small solar cell that you can see here. Then I have a larger type of solar cell here. This is a solar charger that can be put mounted in a car in order to charge. So it's really quite thin and lightweight, this solar charging plate. And you can see here on the image in the background, this is the photovoltaics. These are photovoltaics panels that we have on our building here. So this image I took this morning out of my office window. And you can see that there are photovoltaics modules mounted on the roof here in order to generate electricity by the sun for us here at Kiel University at the Faculty of Engineering. So with this part of the lecture, I first of all want to start in this video about talking what is light. The solar panels you see here, they use the sunlight in order to generate electricity. And of course, the question is, how can they do this? And the first part of this is, what is even sunlight? What do we get from the sun in terms of energy? And how can it be converted? So let's start and look at first of all, what is sunlight? And I have here hand-drawn wave. So first of all, light you might think about as an electromagnetic wave. And the wave can have a different wavelength, lambda, depending on what color of light we have. So if we have light in the blue spectral range, the wavelength might be in the range of 400 to 450 nanometers. If we have in the red range wavelength, then we might have a wavelength that is around 600 or 650 nanometers, for example. So this wave that is shown here is characterized by its wavelength, and the wavelength defines the color of the light and of radiation. You can extend this whole principle of electromagnetic waves also to other wavelengths, like to radio waves, for example, or to X-ray also, but here we are going to talk about the radiation of the sun, which has a lot of parts in the visible wavelength range, but also some parts in the infrared and in the ultraviolet. So the wavelength, this is for this wave here, the difference between where the two maxima are or where two minima are, or also just the spatial difference from 1 0 to one wave further the next zero. So the wavelength can be used to describe the wave, but we can also describe the wave in terms of the frequency. And here I put down the equation for you. So the frequency of light is defined by, or is given by, the speed of light, c, divided by the wavelength. And the speed of light is very fast, 3 × 10⁸ meters per second. So if we have, we can then calculate from our wavelengths and the speed of light what the frequency of light is. And of course, if the wavelength is smaller, the frequency is larger, as you can see from this inverse relationship. Okay, so all fine so far. So we have electromagnetic radiation coming from the sun. But already in the 19th century, experiments were performed that showed another observation of what is going on if radiation hits a solid material. And this is the so-called photoelectric effect. And something really interesting was observed. So if you have radiation hitting a solid material for certain frequencies of the light or certain wavelengths, electrons will leave the material, so will be ejected from the material after if radiation hits the material, and the electrons can have different velocities v with which they are leaving the material, so different kinetic energies. And what was interesting now is that it was found out that only for certain, if the light exceeds a certain frequency, then this effect happens. If the light has a lower frequency, that is a longer wavelength, then we see that no matter how much light intensity we put on or how long the duration of the exposure is, we won't get any electrons out of the material. So this was really puzzling, because if you think of light as an electromagnetic wave, it transports energy, and because of that you would expect, well, you can either have a high intensity for a short time, or for a long time a lower intensity of light coming in, and something should happen with this photoelectric effect. But the observation was that only if the light radiation here exceeds a certain frequency do we observe the photoelectric effect. And then Albert Einstein was actually the one who proposed that this means that light has to consist of discrete energy packets. So there has to be something about it that is energy related, discrete energy related, so that if you have a frequency that is too low, the energy packages have too low energy and cannot generate these this photoelectric effect here. So these discrete energy packages, that is what was named later on photons. So that means that light can be viewed as a radiation wave, but there are also effects that can only be explained if you consider light as energy packets, that is, as photons coming in. And these energy packets, they have an energy that is given by the Planck constant h multiplied by the frequency of the light. And the Planck constant is given down here, that is 6.626 times 10 to the minus 34 joule second. So multiplying this Planck constant with the frequency of the light, it was observed then that we have a certain energy, and this energy defines if the photoelectric effect can happen or not. So this is the energy of a single photon of frequency f. And we have seen initially that the frequency of a photon or the frequency of an electromagnetic wave and the wavelength are related by the speed of light. So we can also rewrite this as shown back here as h times c over lambda. And we see that if the wavelength is longer, this means that the energy of the photon is lower. If the wavelength is shorter, we have a larger photon energy. I also put down for completeness this formula in the middle here. This is also often used. So the h bar is the Planck constant h divided by 2 pi. And the omega here, that is the angular frequency, which is given by 2 pi times the frequency. And therefore, you can also write this in terms of angular frequency and the h bar value of the constant. So that means photon also, light has to be considered as photons that are energy quanta. So we can think of a photon as carrying energy. And also for completeness, the photons don't have any mass. So they are mass-free, but they are energy packets that deliver energy. So these photons are radiated by the sun and reach the earth and can be used for photovoltaics. This formula I put down here is another useful formula in order to calculate the energy of a photon in electron volt for a given wavelength in micron. So in order to do that, if you have 1 micron of wavelength, it means you divide 1.24 divided by the wavelength in micron, and get that this is 1.24 electron volts. Or if you have correspondingly a wavelength of 500 nanometers, it means you have to put in here 0.5 microns and you obtain 2.48 electron volts for the energy of the photons in electron volts. This unit electron volts has been seen to be very useful because the numbers are close to somewhere around 1, as we just saw in the example. And the electron volt is defined by the charge elementary charge E, which is 1.602 times 10 to the minus 19 coulomb, multiplied with the unit volt, and therefore 1 electron volt corresponds to 1.602 times 10 to the minus 19 joules. So a very small amount of energy for a single photon, but of course many photons are coming from the sun to the Earth. A side remark, Max Planck, after whom this Planck constant here is named and who did experiments also in this area, was born here in Kiel, where we are located, in 1858. And he had his first professorship also here at Kiel University from 1885 to 1889. And he actually suggested in 1900 that the electromagnetic waves need to consist of packets of energy. So then later on in his honor, this was named the Planck constant here. Okay, so what we have seen is that light, we say, has a wave-particle duality. That means that we have effects that are explained by the wave nature of light, and we have effects that are named by the quantum nature, that is that they are energy packages. So you can kind of wonder, how can a photon or how can light be at the same time kind of a particle where you have discrete particles going about, and also an energy wave that is kind of continuous. And one image that I find helpful to kind of imagine how this might look like is to imagine that each of these packages of energy, each of these photons, consists of a train of radiation that has a certain defined length. And so each photon is a wave train or a wave packet of a defined length. And then if you have a beam of radiation, that means that you have many of these wave packets moving together with basically different spatial locations where the wave packages start and end. But you can define the average energy that you have by looking at the number of wave packages that you have moving at a specific time at a specific location. The example I'm showing you here is for a monochromatic beam. Monochromatic beam means that what I've shown you here, try to show you with my drawing, is that all the photons have the same wavelength, shown in orange here. So we have lots of photons and they are all orange, meaning they all have the same wavelength. So we have a monochromatic beam of orange light, for example, in this case here. Before moving on to the sunlight, I want to do one side remark on the length of these wave packets. And this length of the wave packets is described by the coherence length, or the coherence length describes how long the individual wave packets are. So lasers have a very long coherence length, so they have long trains of radiation, while sunlight has a short coherence length, so the wave packets are rather short in spatial length if you look of where does it start and where does it end. So you might a bit wonder now, so why does it matter where a wave packet starts and ends if we anyways have many of these wave packets in a beam? And the answer to this is that we actually observe for photons, as we do for other waves, wave interference effects. So we can have constructive or destructive interference effects for wave trains that are, for example, reflected in a solar cell stack. And if these interference effects occur or not depends on what is the coherence length compared to the distance where interference effects might happen. So if we have in a solar cell a very thin layers, if you have layers that are 200 nanometers thick, for example, and the typical wave packets, even for sunlight, are probably in the micron range somewhere, depending on which radiation we use exactly. So if we have a coherence length in the micron range and we have our 200 nanometer thick layers in the solar cell, that would mean that we get thin film interference effects also for white light radiation. On the other hand, if we have kind of larger geometry where we are considering different sections of our photovoltaic module that is away by let's say 20 centimeters or something from one surface to the next, then this distance is much longer than the coherence length, and therefore we do not expect to see interference effects. For lasers, because the wave trains are so long, you get interference effects even for very long distances, as these coherence lengths might be in the range up to kilometers or even longer. So we have very long coherence lengths in lasers, but for what we are discussing here, sunlight, we have typically short coherence lengths to consider in our device design. Okay, so this was all talking about the monochromatic light. So now let's look at what the sun is sending us. And here I show you an example, or 3 example spectra actually of the sunlight. And the sunlight, first of all, is broadband. That is, if we look at these spectra here, we see the irradiance plotted over the wavelength. And we see, first of all, that we have parts of radiation going from something like 300 nanometers up to, it's plotted here to 4 microns, but you definitely have significant parts of radiation up to something like 2.5 micrometers, for example. So the photons that the sun is sending out have different wavelengths, different frequencies, and different energies also. And we can see here the distribution. On the y-axis is plotted the irradiance in watt per square meter per nanometer. That is, if you consider these spectra here and you assume that you have a solar cell that has 1 square meter of size, then that would mean for 1 square meter, for example, for this blue curve here, you get around 2 watt per nanometer of wavelength interval. And that means to know the overall energy that you get from the sun, you then need to integrate over these curves, and that we will do in a different video later on. We see 3 different curves here. These 3 curves are the so-called AM0, air mass 0 curve. That is if we are out in space, and we see 2 typical curves of sunlight, the AM 1.5 curves, and we will talk more about where these curves come from and what the air mass means in the next video. So thanks for watching.